Hello and welcome once again to another edition of East of Ethnia. This week I want to talk to you about Serbia again, and in particular I want to talk to you about media in Serbia and what looks like could end up being a pretty big threat to the sustainability of independent media in Serbia at a time of really pretty large political instability and a pretty large chance for political change. So let's get going with it. The first thing I'm going to say is forgive me if some of what I say to you seems to be fairly vague. It's because all of the information that we have on this comes from leaks that have appeared over the last day or so, leaked email exchanges. Not a lot of specificity, not a lot of things are confirmed, but I'm going to try to put it together for you as best as I can. So first, talking about media in Serbia generally, here's one thing that we can say, and that is that the control of regime over media, and especially broadcast media, but print media as well, is pretty tight with some exceptions. And the absolutely dominant media in the country are media engaged in propaganda. And you might want to ask why we haven't talked about this propaganda very much in the last several editions of these video casts. It's because the propaganda is not very interesting, to be honest. It's not very creative. I mean, what you see, you've had protests going on since November, and what you see is a lot of name calling. They call the protesters terrorists. They say that they're foreign agents. They call them different political names. They tried calling them Bolsheviks. They tried calling them fascists. They tried associating them with ethnic groups that are out of favor and so on. Frankly, who cares about it? Same thing with the way that the regime media and official media treat independent media. They say that they're owned by tycoons. They say that they're controlled by foreign interests. They say that they're enemies and so on. Just a lot of name calling, not very interesting, not a lot to talk about. On the other hand, who am I to make judgments about the quality of propaganda, right? I mean, look at the United States. I mean, you could say that the media in Serbia haven't really progressed from the kind of propaganda they were doing in the 90s, but in the United States, you have media under Trump really not going much further than Goebbels did in the 1930s, and the public just seems to lap it up. So maybe quality is not an important measure of propaganda. In any case, standing against this has been, especially in broadcast, a relatively small number of media outlets. What these media outlets have in common largely is that many of them are owned by a single company, a Dutch company called United Group, which owns a sub-company called United Media, that invests in and operates media in the region. So United Media in the region include things like the newspaper Danas, the magazine Nova, Forbes, and so on, but also the television outlet N1, N1 if you prefer. So basically, this is the only independent television station that has general accessibility across the country. And what's happened with United Group is very recently United Group, a majority share of United Group was brought up by a British investing firm, BC Partners. BC Partners used their majority share to oust the founder of the company, a fellow by the name of Dragan Šolak, and to bring in their own person, Stan Miller, who is much less interested, I think, first of all, less interested in the Balkans and in media in the region, and less interested in the independence of media. So what did Stan Miller do as head of United Group with the media holdings in the Balkans? First thing they did is they sold the cable operator SBB that United Media used to run. What this means is that the best assurance that N1 television had that their signal would be carried across cable networks, they lost. They sold it to Telekom Serbia, the state-owned company that is United Media's principal competitor. And since then, this is what's come out in this set of mails that seems to have been leaked to some media, and that is that Stan Miller, the new head of United Group, brought in by the new majority owners, BC Partners, has been negotiating with Nikola Lucic, head of Telekom Serbia, that is with their main competitor, partly over how to transfer this property, like the cable operator that Telekom Serbia bought from United Group, but Also, telecom has become the carrier of demands from the regime to N1. What N1 needs to do to keep the regime happier and perhaps encourage them to stop threatening violence against the journalists and editors of N1, or sending thugs to attack their crews when they come to film a news story, um, and so on. So all of this comes from these email exchanges. One of the main demands that the regime has is that they want United Media in Serbia to fire the employees who are most dedicated to assuring the independence of the media outlets. And apparently, the first name on the list is Alexandra Subotic, who is the regional director of United Media. So this is what seems to be happening. In order to preserve business relations, that the regime is trying to intervene in a way that's going to affect media relations in the country. What does this mean? Well, it's going to affect the availability of independent media in Serbia in a certain way. What we can say is that will affect broadcast media, and especially television, much more than other media, including print media and online media. Does this mean that independent sources of information will become unavailable? Probably not. It didn't mean this in the past when related regimes in Serbia have moved against independent media. It means that it's going to be more difficult to get access to them, and access to them is more likely to be restricted to people who either know enough or who care enough to be able to try to get access. So that's what's going to happen there. This fight is going on. I mean, one thing it shows is, first of all, despite indications that you might have with people making declarations to the contrary, you have a regime that is worried, and a regime that is worried tries to control information. The second thing that it probably means is, if they're directing their attention particularly toward media, that all of these guesses that elections might be coming soon, that the regime is going to give in to demands to holding elections, might be right, because one thing that they're going to try to assure control of before they declare an election is sources of information that people have available and sources of publicity for eventual candidates who may be running in the elections. So this is, at least what we think is, the danger being presented today to independent media. I'll tell you more if I find more out. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for listening. Talk to you later. Bye bye.